雪花飘飘，北风萧萧，天地一片苍茫。
So the Juggernaut Joe Joyce gets sent to the scrap heap by the Big Bang Zhilei Zhang. This was a very impressive, very dominant performance by Zhang, who takes Joe Joyce out in the 6th round. Joe Joyce's right eye was taking an absolute hammering and had quite a grotesque swelling. And that was it. That was all she wrote. The referee stopped the fight on the doctor's instructions. Don't really have an issue with that stoppage, to be honest, because this was a fairly straightforward and routine fight for Zhilei Zhang. I don't think Joyce was really ever in the fight at all. And I didn't pick Zhilei Zhang to win this fight. I actually thought he'd get stopped in the 10th round, so late in the fight. But I did envisage that he'd have some early success. And indeed he did. So much success that he was able to get the fight done and dusted before the halfway point. I spoke specifically about how it was going to be very important for Zhang to really get Joyce under manners early. Zhang is a very good counter puncher. I think actually quite underrated. He can counter with both hands, particularly with the straight left and the right hook. And he actually counters the jab quite well, which is quite demoralizing when you factor in that a lot of fighters actually look to set up their offense with the jab, as Joe Joyce did. And Joe Joyce was just getting pieced up from early, particularly with, I outlined this in the pre-fight video, Zhang, he likes to counter the jab either by splitting it with the left hand or baiting it by being on the front half of his stance and then pulling back with the right hook. And he did both. And sometimes he'd put it together. And there were times where Joe Joyce was getting hit by 2, 3, 4 punch combinations clean. It was accurate work from Zhang. And very impressive. There's a certain smoothness that Zhang has, at least when he's going up against these other big guys who are roughly the same size as him. You can see the experience because his style is quite refined. He has a smooth rhythm. And you think, okay, maybe this rhythm is a bit predictable, but it's Zhang, he understands that kind of timing. So he has an understanding of when he can let his shots go. He also has an understanding of when you're going to look to attack him, or at least threaten him or probe at him. And he just counters it, or at least he did against Joe Joyce. So very impressive. I thought it was going to be very important that he looks to basically assert himself in this fight against Joe Joyce, because Joyce, he's no stranger to really taking some shots early, but then he starts to impose himself. He starts to get that momentum, and that's when he becomes really difficult to beat. And I've said it for a couple of years now, since the beginning of the channel, that Joe Joyce really is like the Juggernaut from the comic books. If you're able to immobilize him, then you can manage him fairly easily. However, if you allow him to get that momentum, he will become unstoppable. But Zhilei Zhang took the initiative, didn't wait for that to happen. He nipped it in the bud, didn't allow Joe Joyce to get into his groove, countered everything he did, really had answers for everything Joe Joyce did, whereas Joe Joyce looked almost novice-y in comparison. He obviously, we know Joyce is quite clunky, very weird style, very almost amateurish. But Joe Joyce is a good fighter. People shouldn't really take back all the credit they gave to Joyce. Joyce is still the same fighter. It's just stylistically he came against someone who probably has his number, because this was a very routine win for Zhilei Zhang. The first thing that really kind of struck me was when the fight started, the first bell was gone, and Zhang has just come out straight away into the center of the ring, and he's held the center of the ring as well, pretty much for the entirety of the round. That really set the tone, I felt, because if you factor in that Joyce is someone who, typically the bigger man in the ring against his opponents, looks to impose himself, all of a sudden he's getting held at a distance, and Zhang is the one controlling the fight, dictating what happens and where. Checking the lead hand of Joe Joyce, showing that, okay, I'm setting a timing, and if you don't keep up, I will line up a big shot. And that's what he did. And in the meantime, he was threatening with both hands, the right hook, the left hand, giving different looks. And Joe Joyce just didn't really have any answers. Whereas with Zhang, if he didn't want to engage, if he didn't want to keep up that timing or counter that timing, he'd just take a little step off or even a half step. So he's managing distance really well when he didn't want to engage, and when he did, he just had these counters with the left hand, with the right hook, and yeah, it was easy work, really. There's not really that much to say on this fight. I don't feel anyway. It was really, it was really just Zhang flexing on Joyce, and I do like Zhang. I like both fighters, to be honest. So this was, I was more than happy with this matchup. I made that quite clear. But with Zhang, there's just something. There's like a certain I don't know. He's almost a bit goofy, but at the same time, I like the swagger he has because he just believes wholeheartedly in himself. I saw some behind the scenes videos of the ring walk, and Zhang was just walking through this corridor towards the ring, and he didn't look nervous at all. To him, it just looked like it was another day in the office. But then you factor in this guy's thousands of miles away from home, going in against a massive betting favourite and the house fighter. This guy didn't care. Had gloves, will travel, and he just did a job on Joyce. So yeah, I like Zhang. I'm not gonna pretend as if he's the best thing since sliced bread, but Zhang's going to be one of these fighters that I tune in to watch from now on, because there's 2 fights in a row he's impressed me quite a bit. Joe Joyce, on the other hand, he's I do wonder what's going to be next for him, because I can't really fault the way Joyce has kind of gone in his career. He's fought a lot of decent guys, dealt with him in good fashion. Seemed like he was within touching distance of that world title fight against Usyk, or maybe even Fury, I don't know. But just lost to Zhang. Could he beat Zhang in a rematch? Yeah, I'm sure he could. Would I pick him? I don't know. Because that was a hard loss to take. So maybe he surprises me. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, I don't even want to say that Joe Joyce really did anything wrong. I just think he didn't do enough, but it was mostly because Zhang didn't allow him to. Zhang just seemed to have answers for everything he did. Just seemed to really implement his game plan and his tactics before Joyce could implement his. Because there were some things that I highlighted that Hrgovic did against Zhang that Joyce may be able to use himself and capitalise on, such as using some of the lighter shots to get Zhang to shell up and maybe go to the body or hit him somewhere else. And Joyce, it got to a point where he did try that. He looked to just throw some shots out there, no power on them, but just occupy the guard of Zhang. But nothing really came of that. And I think it was just, once again, came down to the subtlety of Zhang and how he approached the fight. The counters were really sharp, so that's obviously going to get a fighter a bit gun shy, especially when you're as slow as Joyce, really. The way he managed distance as well. Joyce, this is going to seem a little bit insignificant to some, but there are a lot of times, because I watched the fight once and I went through it again, pausing, rewinding, like really trying to break it down. And there were a lot of times where Joyce kind of got caught on his toes on both feet. And now I know it's very common to say, oh, you've got to get on your toes, you've got to move around. I think that's a bit of a misnomer. You don't actually want to be on the toes of both feet because you're on your tiptoes. You're not going to be balancing very well. But there were often times I'd see freeze frames where Joyce was in that position. He's not going to be in an effective position to attack or defend and follow up at all. So when you factor in that Zhang's probably managing the distance quite well and Joe Joyce is just there doing his best Michael Jackson impression on his toes, not going to be in a great position to follow up. So yeah, I think it's back to the drawing board for Joe Joyce. Interesting where he goes from here. Zhang, he goes onwards and upwards. I think I've seen some headlines about him saying he'll wait for Joe Joyce. I guess that's insinuating immediate rematch. I can see why Zhang would probably take an immediate rematch, because this was easy money when well, at least that's how I see it anyway. very impressive, very dominant victory. And as I said, I commented on one of Hatman's videos, this win's probably going to do his social credit score wonders. So congratulations, Zhilei Zhang, and commiserations to Joe Joyce. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What did you think of the performances of both men? Were you as impressed as I am with Zhang's performance? As I say, I don't really think that Joe Joyce did anything wrong. He just wasn't let into the fight. Although, one thing I just want to bring up, I actually watched an interview of Joe Joyce. I think it was on Boxing King Media channel on YouTube. I think that's the name of the channel. And Joe Joyce, his voice sounded a little bit slurred. You know, he was slurring his words a little bit. And I'm just wondering if the punishment that Joyce has taken is starting to catch up to him, because I'm fully aware that Joe Joyce is no wordsmith, but it's always a little bit concerning when you have a fighter who you notice a change in how they speak, you know, or they slur their words, or they take ages to think when they're asked a question, stuff like that, all these kind of neurological, cognitive defects. It's never a good look, and it's always a cause for concern. Yeah, just something that was kind of stuck in my mind in the lead up to this fight. But yeah, we'll address that as and when. But yeah, for now, leave your comments in the comment section below. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.